All right, well, let's get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Jill Dossie. I'm curator at the Museum of Contemporary Art San Diego, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to a virtual studio visit and happy hour with artist Katie Ruiz. I think we have about 100 people joining us tonight, so welcome everyone. I wish I could see all of your faces. This visit was originally scheduled as an event for our Avant-Garde membership group, and Avant-Garde is the museum's group of emerging collectors and art supporters, and we do a lot of fun things. And when we decided to translate that event into this new remote format, Katie was generous enough to open the visit to the museum's entire membership. So Katie, thank you for doing this with us and allowing us to have a glimpse inside your studio, the chance to learn about your practice. And I think it's really a gift to have you share your vibrant work with us at this time. Let me do a brief introduction and say that Katie Ruiz is a San Diego-based painter and sculptor. She holds a bachelor's degree in art from Northern Arizona University and a master's degree in fine art from the New York Studio School. Ruiz teaches at the San Diego Community College. Her work has been shown in galleries and art spaces locally and nationally, and it's currently part of the group exhibition Sidewalk Activism at the Oceanside Museum of Art, for which I know she's doing some exciting programs. And let me also highlight that she led a weaving workshop as part of To Do a Mending project at MCASD last summer, and also last year had a memorable two-person exhibition with artist April Rose that was curated by Alessandra Moctezuma at the Mesa College Art Gallery. So welcome, Katie. I'll get started with some questions for Katie, and I know she's prepared some slides for us that she'll share before we have a look inside her studio, what's inside her studio now. And then we'll try to leave some questions at the end from the audience. So Katie, can you start out by telling us a bit about yourself, your background, and how you came to be an artist?
Yes. Hi, Jill. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and be able to talk about my work. And my name is Katie Ruiz, and I was born in Los Angeles. I was born by a Mexican father and a amazing Caucasian woman from Chicago, which makes me a Chicana. And I really like that word, and it works for me because it felt like the first time that I felt like I had a real secure culture before I felt sort of split in half. So that was, it's a great word and I love to use it. So you'll hear me say it over and over. So I grew up in LA until I was about 10 years old, and then my parents separated and I was raised by a single mother, and we moved to Arizona, to Prescott, Arizona, where I had a really creative, open childhood. We had forest. We didn't lock our front door. It was just a really delightful little town to grow up in, and it really fostered my creativity. And my family has always fostered my creativity. I would say that my dad is very creative, and a lot of the people in my family have a lot of creative spark to them. So I grew up in Arizona, and then I came back to LA in 2008, and I did a lot of things back here in California, moving back home, sort of completing my journey after Northern Arizona University and starting my life here in California. I have always wanted to move to New York City. It has always been a dream of mine, and I applied for the New York City Teacher Fellows, and I got accepted, and I went to New York City, and I did half of that master's degree in education, and then I really felt the calling to do what I knew I have always been meant to do, and that is be an artist. So I applied to the New York Studio School of Drawing, Painting, and Sculpture, and it was one of those experiences. When I walked into the school, they showed me some of the studios, and I cried. I was like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. And the New York Studio School, I was there in New York from 2012 to 16. And while I was there for 4 years, I learned so much about the art world. I we would have class at the Met. We would draw from the Titians. We would go to Wolfcon's studio for a day. You know, it was a really exciting, amazing place to learn about artists and to learn about the art world. And but then I wanted to come home. End of 2016, I wanted to come home to back to California. About the time my father passed away, and I really just felt like I wanted to be close to family again. And I love California. I love the weather, and I feel really glad to be back in California. And pretty much all of my family has sort of settled in San Diego. There's a few scattered around, but there's a big group of us, so it definitely feels like home.
Well, we're glad to have you in San Diego. Let's talk about the evolution of your work. You know, you're working a lot with fiber art now, and we can see the works on the wall behind you, and we'll look around your studio in a moment. But you started as a painter, and you became known especially for your blanket paintings. And these are paintings that usually depict two people, but sometimes three people, sometimes a solitary person shrouded in a blanket. And in San Diego, I think many of us started seeing these works around 2018. And so I'm curious to know when you started making these and how did you arrive at this image?
Yeah, let me share my screen, and I can give you a few images to look at while I describe some of this work. This is some of the newer work, so we're going to circle back to this image at the end. So I talked a little bit about my parents, but here's a very cute picture of them so that you can see that I am the perfect combo of the two. This is the first blanket painting I made. So I think this one's really familiar to a lot of people. It's sort of circulated around a lot. And this one, I was at the New York Studio School, but I really was just trying to find a way. I've been a figure painter my whole life, and I wanted to abstract the form, basically. But I still wanted it to be about a figure. I still wanted it to be about the couple, about the relationship, and about the communication. So that's where the blanket sort of becomes a metaphor for a bridge or a connection or a safe space that two people or three people or many people, families, are sharing under a blanket.
It's a really interesting way of painting the figure because you're both presenting the figure and you're withholding the figure and kind of giving them a certain amount of privacy. And these are very intimate paintings.
Yeah, I think it's one thing that I found that was really successful about these paintings is that by covering the face of the people, it allowed the viewer to sort of step in as that person. So a lot of the response that I get is, oh, you know, I feel like that person, or that feels like me and my partner, or me and my child, or however they want to see it. So it seemed like it allowed for other people to take a bigger role in the narrative of the painting.
Can we see a few more?
Oh, yeah. This one, so specifically these blankets I collected, and I own actually these 3 blankets that you've seen so far. So this one I bought in Guanajuato. The first top one I showed you, I bought in India when I went on semester at sea. I forgot to tell that ditty of information. And before I moved to California, when I was living in Arizona, I went on semester at sea and traveled to 10 different countries. So I collected a lot of blankets and textiles. That was maybe the first collection of blankets. And this one in particular is a Mickey Mouse blanket, which for me represented the American part of me and then the Mexican part of me, as well as sort of coming out of the blanket, but in the same symbolism of some of the patterns that we're going to take a look at. So let's see what we have here. So a few more examples of me just working through the blanket idea. Okay, I can cover the form. Do I always have to cover the head? This one, I started looking up patterns on the internet because I ran out of blankets. And then I started realizing that these patterns have symbolism to them. So the symbols ended up becoming, this one is a made up one just from my head, but you can see that I painted this one first and then this one. So then I start building more environments of them. So now you start seeing that they're on a pathway. This one, people see it both ways. Are they walking towards somewhere together, or are they splitting apart? Are the feet coming towards you? It's sort of flips depending on how people want to see it. Let's see what else we have. So here is the beginning of the otomi textiles. This is a traditional type of textile that really got me interested in learning about textiles, because I studied this type of embroidery, which is tenango. And this stitch comes from Spain, and so does embroidery in general, but it was brought to Mexico, and then it's merged with very old, ancient, pre-Hispanic cave painting animals. That's what these animals are. They're from cave paintings. They're fantastical animals, and they're very colorful. Of course, I was drawn to these gorgeous textiles, so I used that one in that specific piece.
Okay, well, I want to come back to the animal imagery, but so, and maybe I'm getting ahead of us, but so you're making these paintings of textiles, which leads you to actually begin making your own textiles. And you went so far as you moved to Oaxaca for a time, and you learned backstrap weaving, is that right?
Yes, yes.
Or even, we're happy to see more of the paintings.
Absolutely. So this was me trying to sort of abstract blanket patterns. So you can see that I'm just becoming more interested in the pattern rather than the figure at this point. And that is when I go to Oaxaca to start learning traditional backstrap weaving. And I stayed there for a month, and I stayed in San Pablo Etla, which is in the mountains. And it was just an absolutely gorgeous artist residency. This is a picture of me sitting back. So I'm just, taking a picture straight down of my lap, because the strap wraps around your back, which is something that I think is really beautiful part of this type of weaving, because it can only be as wide as you are. And so it's made to fit your body. And I think that became something very intimate and personal as well, in a completely different way. So all of these things keep layering and layering on top of each other, and I'm really just in search of blankets and symbolism. And I've always loved craft, so weaving here's me weaving away, and it was very slow. It was very hard at first. Painting for me is rapid and emotional, and weaving was methodical, slow. Something even, you have to count the stitches as you go if you're making a symbol. And the lady who was teaching us, Norma, she would say, okay, 3, then 5, then 6, then 2. And we're like, how do you know this? And she just has the symbols in her head and how to count the lines out, because she's been doing it since childhood. And this has been passed down from generation to generation. So these symbols are just a really big part of textile. For people who make the textiles, they weave their stories of their families, of their animals, of their farms, of their children, all kinds of things. So it's another language, just the pattern on the blanket. And I found that absolutely fascinating.
So, well, I have a couple questions, I think. Well, go ahead and tell us a little bit more about your process.
Okay, so then I took all my yarn home, and I hand dyed wool from Oaxaca, and I got agave fiber, which is called ixtle, and then I had saran wrap covering my palette, which then became painted saran wrap. And then I just started looking for anything that I could kind of shove into a weaving. I found shells, I found condoms. I sliced up a painting, which you can see there, and then wove it in so you could see the figure within the blanket, although it didn't work very well, but it became a sculpture later, which we'll see. So these are some of the symbols. This is my more contemporary work with ancient and contemporary pieces being woven in. And then on the right, we have some of the symbols that I was learning. The top one is women carrying corn, or carrying water. No, carrying corn. It's not finished at the top yet. The second one is ribs. The third one is mountains. The fourth one is lightning. And the fifth one is just a design element of triangles. So that takes us here.
Well, so I think actually knowing that what this is, one of my questions has, you used the word craft a moment ago, and I wondered if you could talk about your relationship to craft and all, as well as to feminism, because you and I were talking before about how, you know, in the 1970s and the following decades, feminist art really opened a space in which textile-based practices that were previously seen as mere craft and you know, dismissed as women's work were suddenly, you know, were validated. And you know, in this way, this realm of craft that was once marginalized became a site of resistance and often has a political charge to it. So I wanted to talk about your relationship to that lineage, and I think you're already going there with this slide.
Yeah, I think it's a really important part of this journey. When I was a little girl, I did craft club every Saturday, you know, and then I also did painting. And at some point, I basically was told I had to choose fine art or be a crafty girl. And that wasn't as good, basically, is what I was told. It wasn't serious. It wasn't worthwhile. It wasn't sellable. And so I believed it, and I went on being a painter, and I got stuck in that box. And, you know, I think people like Picasso, in a way, broke me out of my mold, because I saw him just willing to, if he wanted to paint, he painted. If he wanted to weld, he welded. If he wanted to make a pottery, he made a pottery. If he wanted to, anything he wanted to do, he did it, and he didn't limit himself. So I think that was one of the first things where I thought, well, if he's doing it, I'm going to do it. And then
one thing here to tell people that what's on the screen is this is an image of the sculptor Sheila Hicks, who is a pioneering fiber artist who creates vivid woven sculptural installations, often on a very large scale. So she's a reference point for you as well.
Yeah, and when I found her work, the mold was broken after that. I thought, wow, you can use giant pom-poms and have it be huge contemporary art, and it's gorgeous, it's accessible, it is, you know, it's tactile, and she's brave. I thought, she's so brave to do that. And I just wanted to take a bit of bravery from her and learn from her work. So then, yeah, I went back into the studio and made weavings. I took them home, and then I met Sheila Hicks in my head. I didn't meet her, but I studied her along with a lot of, you know, someone else, Betty Saar is a good one to talk about, assemblage, putting things together. I started finding really things that were playful. I didn't have a studio at the time, but I had yarn on my floor, and I had shells I had collected from the beach, and I had all these old weavings. So I rolled them up, and I stuck yarn through them, and I put, there's my cut up pajama pants are in there, and someone's high heel shoe that I found in the street, and there's all kinds of fun things in there. So that also then became a whole new thing. And I think this is the first time I ever successfully got off the wall as a two-dimensional person.
So interesting. And I'm just going to, in my role as like educator and art history nerd, say, so, Betty Saar, important assemblage artist who was an influential figure in the Black art scene in LA in the 60s and 70s, and as well, a really important figure in second wave feminism. So again, I mean, I think I'm just seeing the relationship in your work that harkens back to these figures who came to prominence in the 1970s and that moment.
Okay, so this is moving away from the sculptures a little bit. And I think this is, again, like I said, my brain definitely likes to go through a couple different pathways. Sometimes I want to move fast and paint fast and think fast. And other times I want to move slow and be more methodical. So this piece, moving back to talking about animals and I'm going to actually go back to that piece afterwards.
Well, it's interesting because I think the other thing that I wanted to kind of highlight in your work, and we can talk about this more when we're looking at the work in your studio, is that there actually is this kind of surrealist dimension to the work, or I would say also a kind of magic realism and this fantastical dimension. So maybe actually, can you just elaborate a bit more on how animals function as symbolism? I know it goes, or how animals function as symbols, and it harkens back to the patterns in the weaving, but maybe you can say a bit more about that.
Yes, so these specific animals, and you'll notice they all have sort of rainbow stripes like the otomi animals. So they're derived from the otomi. However, I decided to start just channeling through my subconscious after learning about another artist, Hilma af Klint, last year. Was it last year or the year before? She was in the Guggenheim. I think it was 2 years ago now. Yeah. And her work really, I'll just hold up this one. I know I'm small right now, but you can see it's a rainbow circle. And
Swedish painter and mystic in the 18th and 19th century, and many people have come to know her work through this major retrospective that was at the Guggenheim last year.
Yes, called Paintings for the Future. And she was channeling spirits, essentially. And so I decided, why don't I paint through my subconscious and use the otomi animals as a starting point? And this is just what came out of me. I didn't really know what they meant for a long time, but usually, so this character came out of my psyche. His name is Rainbow Man. And he sort of birthed out of those plants and then walked up that hill, I guess. And so you can see more influence of the otomi animals. However, it's more about a rebirth of me. It's about connection to animals and nature. Like I said, I grew up in nature and I've always had a really deep connection to it. And the bottom left one, those two faces, I always am able to understand connections between people and see it as colors. So that's my example of it. So all of these animals are based in the ancient prehistoric animals that came from the otomi animals that we showed earlier on the blanket, circling back in a new form to this.
Okay. Great. Well, maybe we should take a look around your studio. It would be great to see what you're working on now.
Yeah. Let me unshare. Okay, so that everyone can see my screen. Can you see my screen big? I think so. Let me expand this. Yeah, I think I'm big. Okay, so let me take you for a little tour here. So this wall is actually going to go to the airport. Sorry, I'm trying to be still. These pieces are made of yarn and embroideries and weavings that became sculptures. And then there's a lot of different elements.
And Katie, when you say airport, you mean that they are going to be on display at the San Diego International Airport as part of the art program there. Is that right?
Yes. So what I mean is exactly that. Thank you, Jill. Is that in the next couple months, we're going to be installing this wall of work at Terminal 2. I think it's gate 26. And there will be a booklet where you can grab and see the work, and there will be you'll be able to see these works up close.
Well, hopefully we'll have the occasion to see, even if not in the near future, but great to have this preview now.
I know that you like this piece, Jill, and it's interesting to now see the weaving that was around my waist is now on the wall attached to a canvas with another weaving wrapped around it. And then down here, I use a lot of found objects in my studio. I used to be a makeup artist, and so I had these long ponytails in my makeup kit that were for brides, like making buns out of them or braids. So I use braids in my work quite often. And also, yes.
It's also, it's your, these pieces that are woven, and then you're also weaving in hair weavings. Other form of, you're referencing this other form of weaving, and it's this mix of the organic and the artificial, and you have wool yarn and you have fake hair. And I think, again, this is what kind of contributes to a certain eccentric surrealist dimension to the work. So I love that. I think you have, yeah, there we go. There's another image.
This one is with the agave fiber.
Okay, right.
But it looks like fake hair, which is, it throws people off every time. But it's really, it actually looks just like horse hair. It's pretty great stuff. I love it. And there's another one here that I think is
yeah, this is more
a pretty simple piece, but I think it works. It's a fishtail blonde braid that am I holding it correctly? I can't see what I'm doing.
Yeah, we can.
A full skein of yarn, like what, Sheila Hicks gave me in life. She made me realize I can use the whole skein of yarn. And that was a frame that broke, and a piece of driftwood that someone found and gave to me. I really start thinking about how the canvas can be part of the sculpture as well in this place. And I kind of like things that are kind of, cruddy. Like this is just a crunched up piece of cardboard. But then there's a whole lot of beautiful silk rainbow thread below it. Mm-hmm. So this one is, now we're moving towards the new body of work, which is where I'm really trying to merge painting and sculpture for the first time.
Great. So previously you were either making paintings on canvas or you were making these wall-bound sculptural objects, but now you're creating this kind of hybrid fusion of the two.
Yes, exactly. Well, I guess this one is a painting sculpture. Okay. But yes, these are supposed to be painting sculptures. And this whole wall, this is a new wall of work that I've been working on since a little bit before the quarantine.
Okay. Wow, those are terrific.
With the crocheted pieces that are coming in, some of them were my grandma's, and some of them I get at like Goodwill. Sometimes people donate them to me, which is really fun. I really enjoy, like this was, my grandma made this. So lost and found, old and new. Like my embroidery hoops become the sculpture now. The puff balls are really, I still think that I make my sculpture the way that I make a painting, because it's based on shapes of color, essentially, I guess. Right. This is another fake beard for you, a doll beard. But yeah.
And are you still making like straight paintings as well? I think you have some.
Yes. So this is a painting I recently finished, and it's moving to New Mexico pretty soon. And I do still make my cute little silly blanket paintings. when I love making those paintings. Things like,
Tell us about the bear a little bit. Can you, do you have any, oh yeah, oh great.
yeah, just, I like to be silly. I like to be playful. We're all stuck inside right now. You might as well be having fun. Yes, so let's talk about, so another body of work, a smaller body of work I've been doing are the bear paintings. And these paintings are about my cousin who is a heroin addict, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to make it so you can see it. Okay, so this one is.
So the bear is, I think in your work, the animals are often stand-ins for people, and in this case, you're saying the bear is like a stand-in surrogate for your cousin.
Yes, we've always called him Bear, so it was easy to make paintings about a bear for this one. But the imagery, again, it just sort of fell out of me. He was in the ICU this time when I painted this, and that's the family sort of trying to hold him up. And then I think he was in the ICU 5 times last year. Like, it's been really, really hard. He's been off and on good for 10 years, and he's a young guy. He's 25 years old, and he's been doing heroin since he was 15. This is called Choice Bear. It's about him choosing which path to go on. Or no, this one's called Your Call, because he's making a call, but we don't know. This one is Your Choice. It's about him choosing between, going back to nature and humanity, or if he's gonna take that cell phone call with the Joker there and go back to the drugs. And then this one was the last time he was in the ICU. Not that long ago, unfortunately, but he's doing well right now. So let's.
And I know this is really personal, but I do find these works super touching, and I think it's meaningful to talk about. I mean, especially in the midst of COVID, so many people are struggling with their own demons right now, and I think you've found a way to really magically, symbolize this person in your family.
Yeah, and he's my cousin, but he's more like a brother to me. I grew up with him, and I just he's really special to our family, and it's a lot of ups and downs, and it's a lot of, like, he doesn't remember what he did, but we remember, and we have to continue to sort of walk through this with him every time it falls back apart, and today I'm happy because he's doing really well. But my whole family we have a lot of addiction in our family. My father passed away from addiction. My aunt is an addict as well. And it's just something that I've learned to deal with as, I guess, just a person on this planet. I don't know. It's just part of my existence. Oops, sorry about the lighting.
Interesting part of your practice that it does open onto these questions of family and community and care, and I actually want to ask you a bit about how your practice has shifted under quarantine. I mean, it's like a question we have to ask, but I'm curious about how you're spending your time and your daily routines. I wonder if this time has caused you to reflect differently on your practice, and the train of thought I've been having is that, I know, like many artists, you're making masks these days, and so suddenly you're engaged in this very different kind of textile-based practice in the service of very different ends than what you're usually doing. So yeah, I mean, what are you thinking about these days? How are you thinking about your practice and how you're spending your time?
I have been making masks, and I do feel very conflicted about making the masks. I think I jumped to help, and I think that people needed masks, and I have a skill and I have a sewing machine, and I think it's really great that I get to have that skill that a lot of people don't have. And Michelle Montjoy from the To Do Mending Project really just got a bunch of people together, and we really started a very cool group of people who, we trade elastic and materials, and somebody's cutting and another person's shipping. And it's become this really gorgeous, amazing community of women. Of course, we are all women. We are all working for free. And, you know, sometimes I think I'm spending a lot of time doing that, and I should have had lived in, I mean, we should be living in a country where there's enough masks prepared. I know that our city had a stockpile for something like this and got rid of it. And it just is, it's frustrating that we don't have we just don't have the stuff to protect our people in this country, and that's not okay. It has felt like a really good thing to be able to do.
Well, it's awfully good of you to do it. We wish you weren't compensating for what our leaders haven't provided, but thank you for doing that. And I know we have some good questions coming in from our audience members. I just want to give you a chance to talk about what you have coming up, because I know you have a big pom-pom project that you're doing with Oceanside, and maybe you can put in a plug for that. And then I'll take some questions from the audience.
Yeah, so the Oceanside Museum of Art, the Sidewalk Activism show that they have up now, which I know is going up virtually if it hasn't already, so you will be able to see it. I have a few pieces in the show, but we're also working to do a huge yarn bomb with the community, a pom-pom bomb, not a yarn bomb, because it is pom-poms, like these pom-poms behind me. Actually, look at that pile of pom-poms. And I'm trying to make as many solid rainbow colored pom-poms as we can, having people in the community make them. And we're going to put a giant yarn bomb up on the side of the facade of the Museum of Art, Oceanside Museum of Art. Now, I'm not sure about the dates on that, if it's going to get moved out a little bit, but we're still planning on doing the project regardless. So I still need pom-poms, and it's really fun to make pom-poms at home. We've been having virtual pom-pom parties. There's one tomorrow with the Oceanside Museum. So I'll teach you how to make them, cut them.
Visible to the public because it's outdoors and people can.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, well, I'm going to take some questions. We have a couple questions. The first question has to do with the meditative nature of weaving and textile work. Do you find this kind of work meditative? And also, can you talk about do you still do painting is the question. I think this came in a little while ago, but you could talk about your relationship to those activities and the meditative quality of them.
Yeah, weaving is more like Netflix and chill for me. It's more like calm. I don't have to use my brain quite as much. I do have to count things, but I don't usually weave things that I have to count too much. I just go with the way the colors look and feel. And then I would say with painting, it's almost like I call it dropping in. I don't know where I go, but I go there. And then often, ever since I was young, I would like walk away from the painting and come back and not even really understand how or what I made. I mean, I know I've been working my butt off my whole life to hone my skills, right? And that's all you can really do is hone your skills so that when the inspiration comes, you feel inspired. But I would say the inspiration for the weavings, it's more like a slow, organic, one string at a time kind of feel, one puffball at a time. Each piece is like putting together a puzzle, you know, okay, does this fit with this? I related it to, what are they, parallelograms? like trying to piece those things, and they have to be perfect to make the piece work.
Okay. Also a question about the scale of your work. Do you ever work on a large scale? I know that you often do.
Yes, and the auction of MCASD has a large piece of mine. A lot of my pieces are about 60 by 48. I don't know why I fell on that size canvas, and I always joke it's ridiculous because my car doesn't fit it by 4 inches. But yeah, that big, this big pink one here, which has lights in front of it now. There are several large paintings, and actually at the 1805 gallery in Little Italy, right around the corner. I had a solo show there last year as well, and it was all 48 by 60s. I think about 6 or 8 of them.
Well, I'll just say that since you mentioned the MCASD auction, that we will still be holding the auction. It's deferred at this point, but everyone stay tuned for when we reschedule it. And we're thrilled, Katie. Thank you for your generous contribution. We also have a question about acquiring a work. And do you have a gallerist, or who can people reach out to if they're interested in buying a work?
I do not have a gallery at the moment, which means wholesale prices. So no, it means absolutely email me personally at my email, which is Katie, Katie Ruiz, and we can maybe type this in, art.
Yeah. Also, feel free, anyone, to reach out to us at the museum, to April or to myself, and we can put you in touch with Katie as well.
Yeah, there's not anything on sale anywhere. I don't post paintings on sale online, but you can email me and I can give you a list of available works.
Okay, great. And then I think we had one other question just coming in about your creative process and what aspect of your creative process makes you happiest.
Oh, I feel like my whole life is a creative process. Speaking back to quarantine, I think that I have enjoyed being able to keep myself in this more creative state. I notice when I allow myself more time to keep myself in this very creative place that I just sort of start living in that place, which doesn't make it very easy for emails and things like that. But I am so enjoying. But I think if you're a creative person, it just comes out in your cooking and your cleaning and whatever you do. I love painting. I've always been attracted to that ooey gooey stuff. There's nothing that'll change that for me, and the vibrancy of the color. And I think maybe that's why I like yarn too. It's just so vibrant and powerful in those skeins. So I love fiber and I love paint and color. Who doesn't? Who doesn't love color?
Do we have any other questions that anyone wants to send our way before we wrap up?
That was so fun.
Yeah, or Katie, anything else you want to share about what you have coming up, or?
Let's see. Well, the airport, we have the Oceanside Museum, and then if you want to join my email list, that's another great way to get when I have a show coming up. I can definitely let you know that way.
Great.
But that's it. I think I've spoken about what I do here, and I really hope that it brings joy. I think my work is serious, but maybe a little silly sometimes, maybe playful in a way. I feel like with the sculptures, it feels very innocent, childlike, like playing with Play-Doh. And the paintings are just another language for me.
Well, Katie, thank you so much. Thank you for your openness today and sharing what you've shared and sharing your work and your practice with us. And I see all the comments coming in that everyone's saying thank you and that they enjoyed this so much. So yeah, this is really, really a gift to our whole community, and we appreciate you. So thanks.
Thank you. It was so nice to see you. Stay safe, everyone.
Okay. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.